In this demo, we show you how KomAInu Compliance Reviewer automatically detects compliance gaps and security-relevant issues in every pull request, and keeps a full audit trail of every finding, including accepted risks and resolutions, so you can generate or update audit reports and streamline your certifications. We will do this demo on the HealthChain repository. It's a great showcase. Medical domain, sensitive data, heavy regulation. That said, KomAInu isn't limited to healthcare. It adapts to any code base and any compliance framework you upload. Let's see how to set up KomAInu Reviewer really quick. First of all, sign in. Then, install the GitHub app. It requires just a few number of clicks. Just select the repositories you would want KomAInu to work on. The selected document now appears in the KomAInu Reviewer app. Select it again to confirm you want to work on this repository. All you do here is drag and drop the documents you want KomAInu Reviewer to work on. For HealthChain, that's documents such as ISO 27001 or FHIR specification, but it could be anything, a norm, a spec, a requirements doc, or any business documentation that gives the reviewer the right context. The extracted requirements from the document now appear in the Requirements tab. Check it if you want to update any requirement. There is also a History tab. It will be useful for traceability, but we will talk about it later. To test our compliance reviewer, I introduced on my branch 10 vulnerabilities to detect. The pull request is also very big, 23 commits and more than 1,000 lines modified. This is done on purpose to show how robust KomAInu Compliance Reviewer is. 2 minutes later, the review is done. KomAInu doesn't spam one finding per requirement. It groups by the real issue in the code. You see one vulnerability with an impact score so you know how serious it is, and under it, the several compliance requirements it breaks. It still points to the exact part of the document that applies. And below that, you get GitHub suggestions on the real lines, so you can review the fix and apply it in one click. To give a comparison with something we know, I will also test with GitHub Copilot review. Of course, I gave this Copilot specific instructions on how to do the review, and I also gave him the same documents we gave our KomAInu Compliance Reviewer for fair comparison. This is how the GitHub Copilot review looks like, but let's see in detail which reviewer did better. So this is a conversation I have with my cursor that has access to my branch and the vulnerabilities that are present in the repository. We can see that KomAInu has way better record, 10 out of 10, while Copilot review goes from 4 to 7 out of 10. Every finding KomAInu detects is recorded in your compliance history, linked to the exact pull request, commit, file, and requirements it violated. Same ID as on GitHub, one card per vulnerability with all the associated requirements underneath, not dozens of separate rows for the same bug. From here, the goal is to sync and update your internal compliance documents. We will show you Google Sheets as an example, but it can be Excel, Word, or whatever format your team already uses. One click and unique vulnerabilities land as rows, with several columns already filled: frameworks, requirement references, impact, suggested treatment, and so on. The point is full traceability. So audits and certifications are much easier to prepare. Now let's close the loop. I go back to the pull request, apply the suggested changes by KomAInu, then come back to the History tab and mark the vulnerability as resolved. I just sync the changes, and that status will be directly reflected in the sheet. The same works with any other status changes. In this demo, we started from an empty spreadsheet and filled it with new findings. If you already have internal documents in place, KomAInu won't override them automatically. You will get suggestions to validate and new vulnerabilities are adapted to your existing format. When you mark something as a false positive, that feedback helps the reviewer learn new context and stop flagging the same pattern on future reviews. That full audit trail, what was found, where, what you decided, and what is reflected in your compliance documents, is already the foundation for your audits instead of assembling the paperwork by hand every time. Thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you use KomAInu. Thank you very much and have a nice day.